What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Kicks and Picks podcast. We are super excited. It is officially the start of the EPL season. We have a very special double episode for you today, as we are going to give you our picks, our locks for the first week of the year in the Premier League and the state of the club with Arsenal, featuring Arsenal. So full squad here, Nick, along with Scotty and Coach Steve. I could see, the back and forth that's been going on this week. The boys are hyped. You're maybe not seeing it in Scotty's face right now. I don't know why that is. That's what I'm looking for. How we feeling, boys?
I'm definitely excited. It was a fun time getting back on the sportsbook apps and start looking through like game day lines as opposed to just kind of digging through the futures that we could find over the course of the summer. I think weirdly enough, I'm more optimistic about my picks this week, knowing nothing about what the teams are going to look like in the beginning of the season than I was towards the end of last season, where we kind of knew what to expect. And maybe that's just because the books are in the same boat where they're unsure of where to set the lines, and I was able to find some value. But I think last year we all started out really hot. I think the first half of our season up until the World Cup break, we were easily plus money. I think we were up like 30 units, and then
At
we were just
least.
kind of holding on in the second half of the season. Still finished plus units, but certainly not our best finish to a season over the past few years. So maybe that trend will continue. Maybe we'll start out hot, and then we just have to find a way to stay hot.
Yeah, the first week is always tough, right?
Hell
Because
yeah.
transfers in and out, you don't know what the lineup's going to look like. I was on RotoWire earlier today as I'm trying to handicap these things, like who's starting, who's maybe rumored to leave and might not play, and those kind of things. But we did finish up. I'm looking at it right now, just about 11 units last season, carried by Nick. I'll throw him a bone there. He was
What's
he was over 8 units plus, so he kept us alive as the season went on. But yeah, it got tougher as the season went on last year as the books
Definitely.
caught up. But we started hot, so we'll look to do that again this week. I know Nick and I are a little bit out of our element without Serie A, but we'll be back next week with that. So we'll make it work for this week.
Yeah, this is where the fun starts. And I think one thing I do want to shout out before we get to our picks, we did not do an EPL futures episode, but one of our very good friends, guest of the podcast, Andrew Pissarro at the Plus Money Pod, did a fantastic futures episode. You guys can watch it in like 15 minutes. He ran through just about every single future there was available. We'll link that when we post this. So definitely give it a shout, because I can speak for myself. I agree with a lot of his future picks.
Yeah, and we might have something on for our Patreon patrons. I think there's a few that I saw in terms of like goal scorers and other player props that we could probably get up there in a doc. So if you're listening to this on Thursday and you're a Patreon patron, feel free to give us a look over there. We should have something up. And if you're not a Patreon patron, now is the time to subscribe, because you're going to have a full season of special props. We do usually on each weekday or weekend we'll throw up some of our favorite player props. Also some other tidbits that we usually sneak in there throughout the season.
Cool. All right, let's roll in, man. We're going to start this episode off hat trick of picks right away. I'm feeling like it's 10-0. So Scotty, why don't you start us with the first winner?
Yeah, and I think for me, like I wanted to make sure we have the opening match is going to be Manchester City versus Burnley on Friday afternoon. There's nothing that I enjoy more than watching that first match and taking a whole bunch of props. So I will start this season off with a pick in that match. I'm going to take Manchester City and Burnley, both teams to score. Right now, it's even money. I'm going to start out by saying this is not your father's Burnley team. We kind of talked about it a little bit last year when Burnley was making their run through the FA Cup. But ever since Vincent Company took over, this team is set up to actually score goals. If you remember Burnley from their previous stints in the Premier League, they're very much a defensive first setup. They're really rough and tumble. They kind of epitomize that traditional English style defense where there's lots of fouls, lots of play after the whistle, so to speak. But this team in the championship, they led the league in goals. They scored 87 goals last season, which is a healthy number no matter what league you're in. I think Vincent Company is going to be setting up their team to attack. He's not going to want to back down and play scared against his former club. So I fully expect them to try to actually challenge City in their opening match. Whether or not that results in a win remains to be seen. Probably not, but I still think they can get a goal. And they've also added a bit in attack in the window this summer. They've added Michael Obafemi from Swansea, who I think had
Still
15
playing?
goals. This is a younger
Wow.
one. This might
Oh, there's more.
be there's other Obafemis, but
Okay.
he's this one from Swansea. He scored I think 15 goals in the championship for Swansea last season. They also added a player from Basel, Zeki Mduni. I think he had 20 goals for them last season, and that's getting added to Nathan Tella, who had 17 goals for Burnley in the championship last season. So plenty of offensive firepower. May not have enough to outscore Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne and that connection that we saw so successful last season, but certainly enough to get on the score sheet, I think, in their opening match.
All right. I'm going to jump over to France for my first one. Ligue 1, not always the easiest to handicap, but like I said,
Coach Worldwide coming in hot week 1. I love it.
Pick one. Week 1, pick
Coach
one.
Worldwide does not take any weeks off.
Now, most weeks this would probably be a reach pick. I feel like this week it has a pretty decent chance of hitting because it is week 1. And like I said, those opening weekend matches are always tough to predict, those incoming and outgoing transfers. And no team has seen more star power exit than PSG this summer. Messi's now in MLS tearing it up. Mbappe's frozen out of the side. Some move somewhere is going to be happening soon for him. Neymar potentially leaving as well as he's asked to leave. I mean, we could see a whole new starting trio up top for them in this match as they host Lorient. Throwing the new center back pairing with Skriniar joining Marquinhos. So they're going to have to find their, communication and such there in the back as that new center back pairing. And Skriniar didn't play a lot toward the end of last season with Inter. So I don't know if there's any rust to be shaken off there. I think Lorient can keep this close. In fact, 3 of their last 5 matches against PSG would have covered this. They had 2 1-goal losses and a draw in those 5. I'm looking for the host to win for most likely, but I think they might have a bit of a slow start, and it might be a little bit of a struggle for them early on because of all the changes. And that's at minus 105.
This might be bullshit, but did I also see that there's questions around whether Luis Enrique is going to stick around for the start of the season? I know that there was some I
can imagine he's probably pissed off with.
I mean, he's losing everybody, right?
Yeah, I think he's losing everybody. I think he has the directive to bench Mbappe if he doesn't extend his contract or something to that. So I don't know if there's any real legitimacy to that rumor, but at the very least, it kind of speaks to the turmoil that's going on within PSG.
And I almost forgot Verratti's not going to be playing most likely because he's got that Saudi move, that's being held up because of the transfer fee. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, it's definitely
perfect place to strike.
PSG usually a lock in Ligue 1, but this season it's a whole lot.
And they only won the league by 1 point last year too, so they could be vulnerable with all these exits.
I love it.
Fair pick.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to channel my biggest Coach Worldwide I can. I'm using the cheat code because the first pick I give out has to be a winner. And I'm going to Spain, who's also kicking off this week. Real Madrid, money line at plus money, plus 105 at Athletic Bilbao. I don't really know how this pick is available, so it's the first thing that stood out to me. We are going to slam it. And this kind of typically falls into my underdogs first couple weeks trap game. Is Real going to take it seriously? Now that does not apply to Real Madrid. They are the rule here. Real Madrid at plus money, automatic bet. There's no thinking involved. This is the best line I think I've seen for the entire opening weekend of European football.
Yeah, Bilbao's always tough at home, but looking at Real Madrid's projected lineup, it's their normal 11, throwing in at the addition of Jude Bellingham. So
I
a lot of
do
value
not see
here.
how they don't smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very least, it should be like the traditional 75th minute Real Madrid 1-0, 2-1 winner.
Do we have props for Vinny Jr. anytime goal scorer yet?
I did not see it.
That may be added to my Patreon.
I will look it up right now as we roll through the picks.
All right. If it's there, you guys get this for free. If it's not there, then you have to check out our Patreon to see that, because I'm going to take that as a prop for this weekend.
I don't see no player parlays led on DraftKings.
All right. Yeah. So that'll be behind our Patreon paywall if you want that. Moving on. I'm going to stick with England. I'm actually sticking with newly promoted clubs. A trend that I loved last year, and I didn't take advantage of it enough, is that these newly promoted clubs in the Premier League, in their first home match, that atmosphere is electric. It's unbelievable. You get that, what I call big game bounce. So there's lots of upsets galore. I didn't feel like taking it with Burnley in the Friday match because Manchester City is a different beast. It's not necessarily worth it, but I will take it here with Sheffield United. They get Crystal Palace in their home opener. Sheffield United draw no bet is plus 115. So that's be my lock. Last season, I just talked about it. Bournemouth, newly promoted, they won 2-0 versus Villa. Forest beat West Ham 1-0, and Brentford smacked United 4-0. So there's definitely some credence there. Crystal Palace, we called them last year this ultimate Jekyll and Hyde club. Some weeks they look great, some weeks they look awful. This year they don't have Wilfred Zaha, who was like one of their main guys, on the wings, always scoring goals, especially against some of the tougher clubs. So without him, we'll see how this attack shapes out. But for me, Sheffield United, I think they have a as good of a chance in this opening weekend to pull off an upset as any club. So getting them draw no bet at plus money to me is a no-brainer.
All right, I'm sticking in the Premier League with my second one. I'm going with Brighton minus a goal and a half at minus 105. They are hosting fellow Serie A newcomers Luton Town. So they lost McAllister this summer. They're likely losing Moises Caicedo as well. He probably won't play in this one as he's awaiting that transfer to Chelsea. Those are big holes to fill. However, I think Brighton and their play style under Roberto De Zerbi will be too much to handle for the EPL new boys at the Amex. It's a home match. I wanted to take team total minus 1.5, but there wasn't even any value there. So I just think taking them minus 1.5, I do think they win this match by 2 goals. Like you said, Scott, and on those first home matches, they usually get that balance, those newcomers, but I don't see them getting that on the road against a team like Brighton.
Yeah, usually on the road in the first match, it's not the same unless you're playing Liverpool, because that usually happens. But so yeah, maybe we look for their Luton Town's big game bounce for next week. But their stadium, we talked about it, is tiny. It is a true
like 13,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it's a true blue collar stadium. So that'll be interesting. But lots of you mentioned the outgoings from Brighton, coach. I mean, they also have some good incomings as well. I mean, Yao Pedro coming in from Watford should provide them some well needed offensive firepower. And I think they picked up from Dortmund, from Dortmund, just to kind of replace the Alexis McAllister move. So, and also I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my guy, James Milner, the ultimate Swiss Army knife. Don't know if he actually plays in this one at 37 years old, but certainly a good guy to pull off the bench if needed.
All right. I have to go with Liverpool for my second bet.
I don't do it.
I'll tell you where I landed. Team total over 1.5. It's at even money at Chelsea. The guys will tell you I really wanted to slam Liverpool. They're plus 135 on the money line. I may still take that bet, but I'm not making it my lock here. I will say that Scotty and 2 friends of the pod, both named Andy, both Liverpool fans, kind of talked me down, just kind of due to that defensive situation, the lack of a defensive midfielder, a little bit of transfer uncertainty still. But to me, that has nothing to do with the fact that they're going to average about 3 goals a game this year. I think Chelsea still stink. I think this could be the team total play of the year, and we're only in week 1. Liverpool's getting 2.
Yeah, I think the thing that helps you is Fofana for Chelsea's out. I think he was probably one of their most promising center halves. I think Badiashile should still be playing, and he's strong. So it'll be up to him really, and him and Reece James to kind of keep Liverpool at bay. And my only concern with Liverpool is their midfield really hasn't been fleshed out yet. Yes, they brought in McAllister and they brought in Szoboszlai, who should provide sparks offensively, but as we saw with Liverpool last season, when they didn't have possession for good chunks of the game, it isolated their forwards, and didn't matter how strong those guys were. And it's the same guys up top, right? You're still going to have Salah, and you're still going to have Nunez and Diaz and Jota, and Gakpo. But if the midfield doesn't have possession and those guys are isolated, it doesn't really matter how good they are.
2 goals, easy. Maybe 3.
I mean, they should. I mean, they really should, but it's...
There you go. When Scotty, Mr. Pessimistic Liverpool, says that they should score 2, they're probably scoring 4.
It remains to be seen what Liverpool looks like this season.
I don't know who's more pessimistic on their side, him with Liverpool or you with Lazio, because you're pretty bad yourself.
I will say but I am going to bring it back. Liverpool, I took them. I want to say I took their team total or maybe the over in the game for Liverpool the first week of last season. And I think that was my only losing pick in the first 2 weeks. I think I was 5-1 with Liverpool letting me down. So we have to reverse that trend.
Yeah. Or just not learn from our mistakes.
No, never.
One of the two.
Never.
All right. So that'll take me into my third and final lock of the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and take Tottenham money line at Brentford. They're plus 135, which is really why I'm taking it. It feels like that's a pretty good value for what we can expect from this Tottenham side. Yeah, they didn't have the greatest season last year, but Harry Kane should be starting in this one. I don't think his move to Bayern should, or potential move that's to Bayern looks like it's now falling through, should impact that. And he's looked really good under Ange Postecoglou in preseason. He had a hat trick, I think, in his last match. So I'd expect him to kind of drag this offensive line forward. Son should be healthy. I think there's a lot that came up about how he was actually injured for much of last season. Kulusevski is back now as a non-loan player. He's a full Tottenham Hotspur through and through. And then you got Richarlison off the bench, probably, unless Postecoglou does something different. So I think they've got the ability to score. Brentford won't have Nick's guy Ivan Toney suspended for sports betting. Jose Raya likely on his way to Arsenal, so I don't know if he'll be featuring in this match. Who was their really rock solid goalkeeper last year. So lots of holes to fill for Brentford. They didn't do too much in the summer window. So I think they'll probably start the season a little rockier than maybe last season when they came out guns ablaze and like I said, beating Manchester United 4-0. So I'll take Tottenham money line on this one, and hopefully they don't burn me to start the season.
I do want to say I think both Coach Steve and I like this pick as well.
Yeah,
that's really consideration for a lock.
Yeah. Anytime the three of us all are pretty hot on a single pick, that's usually where it starts to get concerning.
No way.
All right, for my last one, I'm gonna finish it up. Also in the Premier League, I'm going Fulham draw no bet at Everton at plus 135. As of now, Fulham really hasn't lost any key contributors from last season's surprise top hat finishing side. And at the moment, Alexander Mitrovic is still with the club and projected to start despite the strong links with a big money move to the Saudi league. So until he goes to the Saudi league, this club can score goals. I don't buy Everton. With him up top, I like the Cottagers to get a result on the road with the protection of the draw no bet.
So this was like the typical game of where I'm like, oh man, I love it. Like underdog, they're like what, +2 something on the money line, right, Coach? Like +230, +240, maybe even better. I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is a good spot. And then I'm looking at it again, and I'm saying, what on earth makes Everton like 150 point favorite?
And so they're Everton's plus 120 and Fulham's plus 230 on the money
plus
line.
110 favorite. So like it scares me like how much I liked Fulham here, but this is like I just like you have to go with them because that's the rule. But like, what don't we know? What do we? I'm missing
what do the
something.
Books know here that we do not.
Scary, very scary.
Yeah, you're talking about an Everton side that barely survived last year.
Good bet to get relegated this year. Yeah, I don't know.
Barely surviving.
So interesting to see what happens with that one. I'm going to go to the battle of 14 versus 15 for my last pick. We are taking West Ham draw no bet -120. They're at Bournemouth. Listen, West Ham kind of a rough year, turned it on towards the end, wound up winning the Conference League. They lost a couple of key guys. We're talking about Paqueta might be on his way out. I heard rumored to City. I don't think it's official yet, so I'm hoping he sticks around and plays this game, but I still think they have enough here to get this done. They're plus 160 on the money line if you're feeling a little bit brave. But the away ties to open up the year, I just think it's a little bit tricky. So I think -120 is a pretty good value here. Draw no bet. You don't have to lay a whole lot, and just praying that West Ham gets off to a better start than they did last year. I don't think I can name 3 players on Bournemouth, so I feel pretty good about this one.
Well,
watch out, Justin Kluivert's there now, Nick.
Oh, even better. Thank you. Can he start?
He is projected to start.
It's going to throw in Dominic Solanke, one of our favorite anytime goal scorer props. And I think, is it Bobby Cordova-Reid? Is he on Bournemouth? Or am I mistaking him? Is he on Forest? He's on Forest.
Proving my point.
I knew it was wrong team. I was going to say, I knew he was there. He was my one of my shot on target parlay guys. But yeah, I think he's on Forest.
All right. Well, hey, here, take us to our pod lock of the week. We're going to continue to stay hot with that. And what's taking us to 10-0 this week?
Well, it's going to be one of our pod lock favorites, which is going to be Newcastle.
It's our team of the pod, Scott.
Yeah, it is our team of the pod. Absolutely.
It's -135. So a little chalky. They're home, which helps to Villa. Listen, we talked, Villa was as hot of a team to end the season last year as anybody. So maybe there's some concern there, but listen, Newcastle just brought in Nick's boy Tonali. And I think the midfield is going to be a much improved part. I think that the offense last season didn't really struggle much. Almiron is still going to be there. Isak is going to be there. Callum Wilson's going to be there. They did lose St. Maximin, but they brought in Harvey Barnes. So, a little like for like replacement there. And when we were talking with our guy Baz, the defense last year was a surprise standout for how little they spent on it. And I think that will likely continue under Eddie Howe. So I think they're going to be as strong of a team as they were last year, probably a bit better, especially with the midfield revamping. And I think it's a tough challenge for Villa to go on the road and open the season at Newcastle. So I like the money line here. I think Newcastle get a win, start their Champions League campaign season where they'll be fighting on multiple fronts. I think they're going to off on a strong foot here.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the Chelsea-Liverpool match, to me, this is the match of the weekend. These are the two feel-good stories from last year, really. And both teams finish in European spots. I mean, Brighton is in there, too, in that mix. But Newcastle will be interesting to see how they play with expectations now. Last year, there was definitely less expectations on them. Even Villa, to an extent, has more expectations after finishing. I think they finished in the Conference League spot last year, so that'll add a little bit there. But I think these are two good sides. I think it'll be an entertaining match. And I think this match could be won in the midfield, right? I mean, you have Guimaraes, Tonali, and Joelinton against Kamara, Luis, and Diaby. I think that could be the key to this match. Both teams have capable attack, so there could be goals. And I think that Newcastle defense, now Schär is questionable, but if he plays, their defense is intact. I think that could be the difference. I think their defense is just a little stronger than Villa.
And I think overall, sorry, Scotty, the outlook on Newcastle has to be everything they did well last year, but they got to score just a little bit more this year. I feel like more goals are going to come from this team.
Yeah, they should. I think, we kind of talked about it with Baz, but the two-headed, beast that is Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak. I don't know that Alexander Isak starts in this one. He might. We'll see what Eddie Howe kind of lines up and what the formation he goes with. But even if he doesn't start, I mean, bringing him off the bench and having him as like that super sub playing in the last 30 minutes against what could be a team that, hasn't had fully conditioned yet with, the beginning of the season in Villa, that defense might get a little leggy and that's where kind of Isak could shine. So if it is close and they have that ability to bring in Isak off the bench, he could be the difference maker.
Love it. All right. That's going to wrap up our very first week of the 23-24 season hat trick of picks. Let's move on to our special guest of the week. Let's bring on Aaron Lerner from the Short Fuse to discuss Arsenal.